Okay, I want to try using some video to talk about this quote from John Piper, this tweet, because I want to show you something while I do it, and this is just an easy way to do it. So, John Piper had an interesting Twitter conversation last night. I probably shouldn't have done it after a glass or two of scotch, about this John Piper quote. Let me read it to you. He says, "If we find God boring, we are like 5-year-olds who find sex boring. The problem is not with sex." Right, you can read it there. Okay, what is John Piper talking about? I happen to think, on reflection, this analogy is very clever. Some of the people I was talking to on Twitter last night found it obscene. Let me explain why I don't think that's true, why this is actually, I think, brilliant theology. Okay. What is John Piper talking about when he says we are like 5-year-olds who find sex boring if we find God boring? Is he talking about 5-year-olds having sex and finding it boring? No, he's not. That's just not what he's talking about. And if you think that that's the illusion he's making, then you just don't get John Piper. That's just ridiculous. In the context of John Piper's output, the idea that John Piper will be talking about 5-year-olds having sex is just ridiculous. So let's just get that idea out of the mind. And the people who think that that's what he's alluding to, or that you could read that into it, I think you want to read that into it, and you want John Piper to be saying that because you don't like John Piper. Let me just say that. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about 5-year-olds comprehending what sex is about, in the same way that some adults, and children for that matter, find God boring when they try to comprehend him. They're just not interested. Okay, so what's he talking about? Let me take you back a few years to the new series of Doctor Who, the second season, and the first episode set on New Earth. It was called New York or something like that. David Tennant's first proper outing alongside Billie Piper, who played the companion Rose. Okay, now in this story, Rose gets taken over by Cassandra, who is the last human being, and sorry, I'm just turning my phone down while I talk to you to make sure we don't get interrupted. And she gets taken over by her, and the Rose taken over by Cassandra is slightly different to the normal Rose. The first thing that she does is that she's wearing this kind of zip tracksuit top, and she basically zips it down to show a bit more of the top of her torso, and in particular, she's kind of exposing the top bits of her breast. It's not rude, but you can kind of tell it's a bit more sexual. So I'm sat there with my mate and some of his kids watching this, and I'm going, "Hello," and my mate goes, "Hello," and his oldest son goes, "Hello," and then their 10-year-old, I think he was about 10 or 11 at the time, turns to us and goes, "What? What did I miss? What did I miss?" Now here's the thing. My mate, his oldest son, and me were sat there watching it. We understand, we get the sexual innuendo that the author of the episode and the director have clearly understood in the script and have presented to us. It is clear sexual innuendo, the bringing down of the zip and the slightly exposing of the top of the breast. It's clear sexual innuendo, and we understand it because we've got testosterone coursing through our bodies. My mate's son doesn't understand it. He sees exactly the same thing that we do, but the whole sexual overtone completely misses him. Now, why is that? Why is that? It's simply because he's not physiologically in the same place that we are. He's not had the whole testosterone running through his body. He's not become a sexual being. And these sexual things just simply, they don't occur to him. He simply doesn't understand them. They simply don't operate in his sphere. This is what John Piper's talking about. This is the analogy he is making. If you have a conversation with a young child, now we've got a 3-year-old boy, we don't have conversations about sex, he's 3 years old, but we do have conversations about bits of the body. You know, we go and have baths, and Ruben has a penis, and Reuben has a penis. He sees it. He knows that urine comes out of it. Papa has a penis. So Reuben and Papa are both boys. Mama doesn't have a penis. Why? Because Mama's a girl. That's good. That's the acceptable answer. And as he gets older, he'll keep on asking questions about bits of his body, and we'll answer them as they come up. But if I tried to, if the topic came up in conversation, if I tried to, and I'm not going to, but I'm just saying, if I tried to explain making love to him and about sexual desire and things like that, he would have no clue. He wouldn't understand it at all. Not because he's too stupid to understand it, not because I hadn't explained it in the right way, but simply, physiologically, he is incapable of comprehending what sexual desire is. And John Piper's saying, some humans are like that when it comes to God. They find God boring in the same way that a 5-year-old finds talking about sex boring. They do. Young children, you kind of, if you go to school and do a bit of science and biology, yeah, that's interesting. Let's move on. They just don't get it. They don't get it. And in the same way, some human beings don't get God. Is the reason that they don't get God because they're not smart enough? No. Is the reason that they don't get God because because Jesus hasn't been explained to them properly? No. I contend the reformed point that John Piper is making here is that, like a 5-year-old who is physiologically incapable of comprehending sex, of understanding what making love is about, so some human beings find God boring. They are simply incapable of finding him interesting and fascinating and wanting to worship him and wanting to live to him because they have not been transformed into regenerated human beings who are focused upon God rather than themselves. The problem with a 5-year-old not understanding what sex is about isn't that sex is boring. The problem is that they are not ready yet to understand it. They are simply incapable of understanding it. The problem with an adult who finds God boring is, in the reformed perspective, not because they haven't been educated about it. They are simply in a position, a spiritual position, like the young child in a physiological position. They are simply in a spiritual position where they cannot comprehend how glorious and how marvellous and how magnificent he is and what he has done. Once you are recognised, once the Holy Spirit transforms you and regenerates you, you understand who God is and what he has done, and you love him and you want to live for him. You want to tell everybody about him. Before that moment, he is uninteresting. The real God of the Bible, the real God of the universe, is boring because you don't get him. You don't understand him. He's either boring or you're just not interested. This is the analogy that John Piper's making. What do you think?